Hey, guess what? I'm Thomas J. Bellezza, and welcome to the Right Mindset. By the way, just so you know, today I'm going to go over creating realistic and effective dialogue in your novels, even scripts. You can use this for scripts as well. So let's really just jump right into it and, make things happen by making things happen. Bloop. Roll the clip. You know, I'm really grateful that you're watching these episodes, these lessons. And as always, if you have a lesson that I haven't made yet, and there are a lot of videos, uh, just let me know in the comments below, and I'll be happy to work out a lesson plan or even just an overview of those things. A lot of the videos I make, just so you understand, are usually overviews with some insight and maybe like I kind of go over a couple things. I do give real time examples occasionally. However, I have live videos that I'm going to be doing where I use the lessons I go over and then I do them in real time. You'll notice there's one for the outlining process. So for the 27 uh, plot points you can do, uh, originally created by Kate O'Keefe. So that's always available. I do those occasionally. I'm going to be doing more as we move forward. However, right now, this video is about creating realistic and effective dialogue. But before we even get into that, remember to subscribe so you don't miss out by hitting that bell icon, especially if you're a newbie or you've been doing it for a while and you kind of want to learn a little bit of something, 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 something. But Thomas, that's me. What is dialogue? I'm glad you asked that. And as always, I write down my lessons so I can kind of read them and then kind of go over it, right? So dialogue is more than what a character says, or in some cases, doesn't say. Dialogue is informed. Dialogue is there to inform your audience and basically to help them gain perspective on what the character is saying, hearing, or reacting physically to, and the story itself that they are allowing to unfold before their very eyes. A person is what they do or do not say. This means dialogue is a window into the insight of a character's mind that helps the audience understand them better. Even when a character responds with 1 word, 10 words, or 0 words, since body language is a language, language and dialogue in any form is used to not only tell you who the characters are, but also to help the audience understand the story. Which brings me to tricks of the trade. I don't know if you know this, but there is plain as day dialogue. You ever read, hopefully you're not, but you ever read dialogue or see dialogue in a film or in a novel, and it's like a character says, "I do not like you." And that, by the way, that's okay. It's okay to be straightforward, just to be like, boom, I don't like you, or I am going to drink a dietary Pepsi and wish I was sponsored by Pepsi. Right? I can write that dialogue, I can say that dialogue. But then there is subtextual dialogue. Dialogue that kind of adds flavor. Sometimes you want to intermix the two, but other times, sometimes as a storyteller, you don't always want to be so direct because the dialogue becomes stale and unrealistic. How often are you direct with people unless it's a very specific situation, right? You're expressing your boundaries or whatever the case may be, right? Sometimes we perform our truth through jokes or sarcasm or whatever the case may be, right? And it isn't always direct. But subtextual dialogue that reflects "I do not like you" might come off, "It's always been about you, even when you used my sister to get what you wanted." All right? They're not outright saying "I do not like you," but in a way they're saying your character does not work with me. I'm not enjoying you. You've used, it's always about you. So we're learning something with "I do not like you." We're not really learning anything about the person speaking. right? We're learning about the person they're speaking to. I do not like you. Okay, so that character is not likable for this character. Maybe they have a rough relationship. But we're not really learning a lot about the character speaking. And with it's always been about you, even when you used my sister to get what you wanted. Now we're learning a little bit about that character. We learn they have a sister. We learn that they're protective about their sister. We learn that uh, they don't like selfish people, which also makes the other character stand out a little bit more with flavor. They're selfish, right? Or at least perceived to be selfish, right? So what is the trick? For me, I like to actually write out the plain as day dialogue when I'm working out a scene. Unless I know the scene, unless it's like it's just I just know what the scene is. Uh, if I don't, I'll just write literally what I want said, like the actual meaning and what I'm trying to convey as straight to the point as possible. The dialogue will be terrible, and that's okay. I might even write in brackets like they need to explain, you know, something their abuse, or they need to explain something about their religious beliefs without giving away their religion. I might write that in brackets, right? I might even write a section, go, this conversation is, I need this character, and I'll just write literally what I need them to say or want them to say. And I might do that with very stagnant, plain as day text. Okay. And then I'll go back and I like to work the dialogue to say the same thing but with flavor, right? So sometimes it's okay to get right to the point, but other times subtextual dialogue, to me, allows a character to really come alive. It gives them a unique voice, right? Because it's the words they choose, how they choose to say it, what they choose not to talk about. We're seeing them react to certain things, etc., etc. Does every line of dialogue have to be worked to hide their straight intentions? To hide their straight intentions? The answer is no, not at all. But subtext is not always a hidden intention. It's just that their true emotions are being expressed in a way that highlights that character's voice, their soul, or their behavior, and isn't so much, hey, I need the audience to know this exact information. Okay. Another thing you could do with dialogue to really give it some effectiveness is have weight to your dialogue. Okay. There is realistic dialogue that comes off, and I'm sure you've seen this, especially in new writers. They write, hey, Mike, how's your day going? And then there's, pretty good. And yours? And it sounds like you're at the cashier when you're like, hey, how's it going? Oh, it's going great. Thanks. And then, and then there's like almost no talking, right? But then there is dialogue that has a realistic flow, but also has an effective purpose to it. This is usually known as cutting off the fat. You might write the conversation where it's like, hey, Mike, how's it going today? Pretty good. Everything's all right. Awesome, man. What can I do for you today? And then the next line is like, I'm actually looking for blank, blank, blank. Do you have that in the store? So you can clean that out and be like, the guy goes, hey, Mike, how's it going today? And just jump right through it, right to that. Like, it's all right. But I need to get blank, blank, blank. Do you have that here today? And you could just get right to the point. And you realize some dialogue isn't necessarily needed, right? So the way I like to do dialogue to get the most out of a scene, you want the dialogue to have purpose. So the best course of action is to ask yourself these questions. Again, this is only one option. This is not the be-all, end-all. This is just something I like to do, and what I like to teach my clients when I'm working with them is when you're looking at a scene, and if the scene seems either stale or exposition-y or nothing, things are happening but nothing is happening, all right, you just have to ask yourself these three questions. What are the characters' motivations in the scene and overall within the story? So basically, what is their motivation in this specific scene we're working on, but also how do we foresee their interaction in the story, their motivations for the whole story? What is their arc, right? The second question is, what does the audience need to know? And the third question is, how do I say a little now and let a lot happen over time? And the reason you ask these three questions, by knowing what the motivations of a character has, you can map out their purpose within a scene. You can map out basically how they talk, why they talk, what they do. Do they do anything? Are they being, are they hiding their intentions? Are they being outright with their intentions? By knowing what the audience needs to know, you're able to tighten up the scene by removing anything that doesn't add to the narrative. This doesn't mean to cut out the fun character stuff. So basically, maybe a character, out of nowhere is like, "Hey, do you have any muffins? I really want muffins." But meanwhile, they're all talking about, the big plans to get they're like, "Oh, we got to get the MacGuffin. We need the MacGuffin, right?" And then someone's like, "Oh, do we have muffins anywhere?" Like, it's just like a nice little character. It's not saying to cut that out per se, but sometimes you can look at a scene, you go, "There's a lot happening, but nothing is happening. So let's clean that up. Let's tighten it up. What does the audience really need to know here? What is a tidbit of the audience? A tidbit of what the audience needs to know." And that's where the by knowing a character's motivations and what the audience needs to know, you can figure out how much you want to add within the scene and map out where you're going to sprinkle it, or as I call it, seeding information over the course of the story. And you have to say to yourself, if a conversation or dialogue in general is bland, as in two characters talking about a cup of coffee, yet that coffee and their feelings about the coffee, let me repeat that. That's a long sentence. If a conversation is bland, as in it's just two characters talking about a cup of coffee, yet that coffee and their feelings about the coffee, A, don't ever influence the story, B, their motivations, actions, or have something deeper being discussed as the coffee is a metaphor, it's C, up to you to say to yourself, maybe I need to rework this moment or take it out completely. What am I trying to say there? Sometimes it's a conversation. Everyone tries to be Quentin Tarantino. Not everyone. There are people who try to be Quentin Tarantino. There's people who try to be Kevin Smith. There are people that like to try to make conversational narrative, right? Like, oh, I really want to talk about the coffee. But the brilliance of a Quentin Tarantino scene where they just seem like they're having a conversation is that subtextual context, that subtext, right? So in this situation, let's say they are talking about a cup of coffee, but they're not talking about their feelings. That's bland, right? But what if the coffee is basically a metaphor for their feelings towards each other? Or, what I really like about coffee is fresh out of the pot. I know it's hot. I know what to expect. I know that I have to give it some time to cool down before I could even sip at it. And maybe this character is talking to another character who is aggressive, short fused, but are really great listeners once they calm and relax. And maybe they're just trying to tell him, I know how you behave, and I like you still. That's why I like this coffee. I know how you work, and I'm gonna be able to. I know how to deal with you. So we're good, but I know you, and sometimes you're a little aggressive, but I like that I know you. You're the devil I know, right? So it's there. All right, conflict. When in doubt about any scene, if it's getting bland, boring, or just a general conversation, think about conflict. How can you add conflict to a scene? Push characters into a corner, physically, mentally, or metaphorically. Conflict or tension. Things, listen, you have to play with the scenes and take a little, and allow your characters to sometimes not be in the know while the audience is aware of the truth. Does a character think they are in control, but the audience knows the other character has a heads up? That's interesting. A great scene to study is the opening scene of Inglorious Bastards with the French farmer and Hans Landa, right? So the audience knows that the French farmer is hiding the Jewish people underneath the house. Hans Landa knows they are there too. And it's a really intense conversation. It's a really good study in dialogue. My point, though, with conflict, and Stephen King has said this in interviews and stuff like that, he goes, sometimes, since he's a pantser, I'm writing scenes, and then I realize to myself, nothing is necessarily happening, so I'm going to do something crazy and push them in the corner. And pushing them in the corner doesn't mean they literally get pushed in the corner, but a friend dies, or a hand gets cut off, or they're put into a situation where they have to fight back. Basically, what I consider that is, and this is a little aside, any information you present to the audience has to be challenged in one way or another, or why present that information in the first place. This isn't necessarily about dialogue, but it's about story and narrative. If you talk about something, it has to be challenged in one way or another. Obviously, if I'm talking about how I like dietary Pepsi, that doesn't necessarily have to be challenged because it's not influential to the story. But if there's information influential to the story, it needs to be challenged. For example, if a character says, "Look, we only have enough food for 3 days." That has to be challenged, and it can't be in 3 days they find more food. It has to be that they are challenged that three food, they only have the 3 days for food. They start getting hungry. They need to find food, and while they're weak, maybe something happens where they have to survive or escape, or one of their friends is almost dead, or you just have to put some conflict into it, a little challenge it. Which brings me to my final thoughts about dialogue and creating realistic and effective dialogue. When creating realistic dialogue takes patience and practice, it does. Listen to your friends, movies, and how it flows in books, and take note on what you like and don't like. And you got to practice as much as you can before you get your story. What I mean is, like, you got to practice and really understand what you're doing before you get to your story, right? Because I'm not saying don't write your story, but you got to practice dialogue, right? And you don't have to just practice dialogue when you're writing your story. Like, you can practice dialogue when you're not writing your story. It's okay to work on like fake conversations between people. For example, you might take some friends because you know their personalities, and you write a conversation with them, using dialogue that is prone to be used by them. But another great exercise in writing is to work out scenes as a practice session and then let friends read them, right? So uh, what's nice about this practice method is it gives them a chance, your friends, to read it, and then do they see one voice in the scene of character through the whole thing, or are they able to feel several character perspectives? Did the subtext of the conversation stand out for your friends? And this gives you a good sense of what you're doing, or you need to work on something, or maybe your intentions weren't necessarily known, so it's okay to work on that, right? What I'm saying is, you have to work out how to find your own voice in writing the voices of others through practice. And some writers only practice dialogue when they are writing their novels or screenplays. But you don't always have to be working on a project to practice writing dialogue. When I started as an illustrator, and when I used to draw, I would spend like days in a row working out eyes, and then like heads and feet and hands and arms and like legs. I just drawing, and but I also I worked in comic book. I started as a comic book guy. But to be able to take on a comic book, I had to be able to hone specific skills. And it wasn't just a hand like this. It was a hand like this, a hand like this, 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 looking at the camera, like different. I would look in the mirror, right? See how what's it look like? And it would just be the hand. It would just be from here to the hand, right? Maybe two hands. So imagine I only worked on my hands when I got a comic book gig, right? It was I wouldn't have control over my craft. So it's okay to break down what it takes to write and into process, or even subsections. Maybe you want to get better at creatively describing scenes. So just describe the scenes around you. Like how would you describe this? You watching this video, how would you describe that in a book or a script, right? So it's okay to do that. For anyone listening, the next video in this series will be I want to go over 3 great tips on writing dialogue, and I will also show you examples of dialogue in different variations, okay? And as always, my question to you is, what is one of your favorite scenes of dialogue in a story? It could be film, television, novel, comic, your choice. Let me in the community know in the comments below. And as always, if you want to learn more about improving your craft, insight to the industry, and hearing from fellow authors, please subscribe and hit that bell icon so you don't miss out. That's right. We have a podcast called The Right Mindset Podcast, and we talk to writers, everyone from authors to screenwriters to producers who work with it, actors who break down scripts, even lyricists and people in different industries that deal with writing or dealing with writers or publishers. Like we have a great interview with a publishing company. So take a little look. See, you could watch it on the. It's the last playlist on this channel, and of course, you can listen on Spotify, etc., etc. All right. Remember to keep developing the right mindset, and I'll see you next time. Hasta luego, Wiedersehen, ciao, bella, au revoir. I don't know.